Good morning to you all. We wish you a warm welcome to the Orgalim Policy Exchange on Machinery Regulation, Impact on our Industry. Before we start, I will just guide you through the housekeeping rules. So the event is recorded and will be shared afterwards. All attendees are muted. There will be a short Q&A at the end of this webinar. So if you'd like to ask any questions to our speakers, please add them in the chat section of GoToWebinar. And please note that due to the high numbers of attendees today, we will not be able to cover all questions. You will find in the handout section a copy of the agenda and the speakers' bios. And finally, you can follow our live Twitter feed on our channel at Orgalim_EU. And please feel free to promote the event. You can use the hashtag Machinery4EU, EU Industry, or Machinery. So without further ado, I will hand over to our moderator, Daniel Wennick, Policy Director at Orgalim. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Happy to see so many people joining the seminar today. This policy exchange, we have over 250 people registered, so it's almost a record. So very happy to see such great interest in this topic. My name is Daniel Wennick. I joined Orgalim as the new policy director about a month ago, and I previously worked for Teknikföretagen, which is one of the members of Orgalim. And I'm both very honored, and it will be a great pleasure that I got the chance to moderate this policy exchange today. We have colleagues in the team that have been working on this issue for a long time already. Many of you will know Orgalim. Orgalim is representing Europe's technology industries. All in all, Orgalim has 770,000 member companies indirectly. Those companies have 11 million employees and with a turnover of 2,500 billion euros per year. We represent 3 different areas in the tech industry. So it's the mechanical engineering, metal technology, electronics engineering, and ICT. Since 2009, the current Machinery Directive has been the core legislation for our industry. Now that negotiations from the 3 European institutions, the European Commission, the European Parliament, and the EU Council, were finished on the 15th of December last year, we look forward to a smooth transition to the new framework and to continue moving towards sustainable and digitalization goals. Orgalim has been a key contributor to the Commission's Machinery Working Group and Editorial Group. We continue to actively contribute to the machinery, where we consolidate the voices of multiple sector organizations as the foremost voice of Europe's technology industry at the EU level. As the machinery regulation now moves into the implementation phase, it's very important for us and our industry to get a smooth transition, to be able to reduce costs, regulatory burden, and safeguard competitiveness. And we would very much want to support European Commission and member states in this effort. With this, can move on to the agenda of today's policy exchange. And the first point now is then a speech from our keynote speaker. And we're very honored to have Mehdi Hossein, Head of Unit on Machinery and Equipment at DG GROW in the European Commission, joining us today. He will give a keynote speech to introduce some of the major changes to the legislative framework. Then we will go on to a panel where each panelist get about 5 minutes to make introductory remarks. First off is Thomas Kraus, Advisor Technical Affairs and EU Regulations at VDMA, one of our German member organizations from the mechanical engineering industries. And he's currently also chair of Orgalim Machinery Task Force. Next speaker is Maureen Loge, the Director General Quality and Safety at FPS Economy Belgium, and also President of the European Corporation for Accreditation. She'll provide us with some insights on first reactions from member states, and Thomas Kraus will, of course, contribute on the industry view. Last but not least, we have Francisco Luis Arribas Martin, who's Project Manager, Industry and Equipment at the Asociación Española de Normalización, UNE. Very honored to have such a distinguished panel and a keynote speaker with us here today. And without further ado, I pass the floor to Mehdi Hessin to give his introductory remarks. By the way, I should say at the end, we will also have questions to the panel from me as moderator, and then a short session of questions from the audience. And as was mentioned before, please write in the chat at the end if you have questions, and we will try to ask them. Thank you very much. I'll pass the floor to Mehdi. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and thank you very much also for this invitation, and good morning to everybody. I'm really happy to be here at Orgalim to make this introduction to this keynote address on the machinery regulation. This is a very important moment. I mean, this new regulation, and I would like also to thank Orgalim because during the negotiation, it took quite some time. We had also valuable input from Orgalim and Orgalim member. And of course, it's not over. I will come about it later on in my presentation, but we will still need on your input for the implementation of this regulation. Voila. Next slide, please. Voila. So I'm going to briefly introduce you the key aspect, key provision of this new regulation. Next slide. And first, I think what is important to underline here is that this regulation was needed. Especially, I mean, because the machinery directive, I don't want to say that it was old, but it dated from 2006, and there was a need to actually reflect in the legislation the key development in the economy. And it's true that at the same time, it's important to reflect this development because without this, you could say that there would be a risk for the EU industry to lose its leadership, because the EU industry is certainly one of the most competitive with technological edge, and certainly legislation can help in this. And at the same time, it was necessary to embrace the new digital technology and as well as the emerging technology such as AI and, of course, cyber safety. So all in all, there was a need. For a new regulation. I think it was requested by everybody. And what is also important, and please next slide, is that we will also turn from a directive to a regulation. With regard to the planning, very quickly, what is important is that we expect the publication to take place in July. Signature of the formal signature ceremony will take place somewhere in June, and entry into force will be July. There will be a transitional period of 42 months, which means that we can have an expected application date in January 27. That's for the application date, but before that, there will be some provision that will already kick in at an earlier stage. I will come back on that later, but also very important, reporting obligation for member states after 24 months. And also with regard to safeguard procedure, there will be simplification already upon entry into force. Next slide. So the key change. First, we are going from a directive to a regulation. This is what I was saying. And it means that there will be less room for different interpretation between member states. There will be also clarity on certain concepts. I don't want to see that everything will be 100% clarified, but I just want to say that, for example, the notion of substantial modification, I think this is one of the good outcome of this regulation. It was agreed and clarified by all member states, and I think it will certainly simplify the life for industry. There are also, as I was mentioning, the new technology. So provision on AI for the safety function, integration of the concept of cyber safety. We also regulate autonomous and remote control machinery. Digitalization, I will come back on that. There will be also, I think it was widely debated, mandatory third-party certification conformity assessment for 6 product categories. There will be common specification, so it will be the possibility for the Commission as a fallback to propose technical specification when suitable harmonized standards are not available. And then also I mentioned streamlined safeguard procedure aligned with other legislation. Next slide. So let's talk about this because I know that this was widely debated. You will remember that the Commission initially proposed 26 categories. In the end, we will have 6 categories that will be subject to mandatory third-party conformity assessment. What is important is that at the end of the day, the number of categories is not that important. What was important is that during the negotiation, there was an agreement on the way to choose this product category and clear and transparent criteria to populate this list of products that will be subject to this mandatory conformity assessment by third party have been established. And that was really, it was quite difficult, but we have clear and objective and transparent criteria. What is also important is that the Commission will have to prepare an harmonized template for the reporting of the member state, because it's good to have common criteria, but it's even better if the input the Commission receives is delivered in the same format. So there will be an harmonized template for the reporting, and the Commission will at the same time also issue a guidance. There will be, if this methodology, this harmonized template and the guidance are not sufficient, the Commission will be empowered to adopt an harmonized methodology for the collection of the data on accidents. And again, because life is something that changes, and we have technical progress, there will be a regular update of the list by the Commission every 5 years to see whether certain products still need to be in this list or not. Well, next slide. What is, of course, and I understand it's a matter of concern for many of you, is the interface with other legislation, and I will here just focus on 2 aspects, AI Act and Cyber Resilience Act. Of course, these are 2 legislation that are still on the making. But for AI, this will be very clear. There will be a single conformity assessment procedure that will be done under the machinery, and that will also cover the aspect of the AI Act. So the idea here will be also to reduce to the maximum the cost and the administrative burden for company. For Cyber Resilience Act, the situation is less clear at the moment, but and it's true that it's not. Again, the Cyber Resilience Act will be a really horizontal act, while the machinery regulation covers only set the issue of the cyber safety in case of a cyber attack. So we'll also try to see, because there is some overlap, not big one, but there is some overlap. We'll try also to see with the colleagues that are currently negotiating this act, how we could make sure that in the end of the day, applying the machinery regulation and the Cyber Resilience Act will not generate also too much burden for company. I propose, I will not mention the PLD at this stage. If we can go to the next slide, please. Yes, this was a very important also, this is a very important element. Here, what is important is that digitalization can help to achieve up to 16.6 billion in saving of printing costs. This figure is huge, but maybe it's a conservative one because it predates the COVID. It's from 2019 at the time we made the impact assessment. So you see that getting rid of paper document can be good in terms of savings for industry and also savings, for the environment. So the solution that was eventually found is that it will be possible to have digital instruction by default. And this digital, the way to access it will have to be put on the machinery directly with the QR code. If it's not on the machinery, it can be somewhere else, accompanying document on the packaging. What is important is that this instruction must be printable, downloadable, and that they must be kept for at least 10 years. There will still be the possibility to request paper, but only at the time of purchase, and then there will be an obligation to give the paper instruction within 30 days. Member states have insisted, however, on one element, is that to keep some paper for non-professional user. And in the final regulation, so there will be there is this obligation to provide the safety information in paper format, but only for non-professional user. Next slide. So, as I was saying, we will still need the input of Orgaline and of its member because we still have a lot to do. So first, I think the most important will be the standardization request. We want to do it as soon as possible because, we are talking here about more than 800 standards, harmonized standards that need to be, that really need to be, can I say, updated in order to reflect the new requirement of the regulation. So it's very important that we have the standardization organization. And I know that in the audience today, we have a lot of you that are members of the technical committee. So we will really need to have you on board for this work, because even if we have 42 months before the entry into application, it will be quite tight deadline for the delivery of the new harmonized standard. Next slide. Voilà, so I also mentioned it with regards to the product for which there will be mandatory third-party conformity assessment. We will need to provide this template. So that's by in a year from now, basically. And we'll also have to rely on the reporting from the member state. Voilà, and on this basis, on the basis of the reporting, we will have to make an assessment, which means that the list that of the 6 product category that we have right now might differ following the first reporting of the member state. It may be reduced or it may be increased. This will really depend on the data. The last point I would like to mention is the issue of the guide. For the time being, of course, so first I want to reassure you there will be a new guide on machinery, but it will not be for tomorrow, because first we'll want to focus on the standardization request and also on the harmonized template and the guidance that are really the priority, but there will be a guide. Of course, we expect also that some of the issues that were in the existing guide will not have to be dealt with any longer. I mentioned substantial modification, but it's also true that since this new regulation is now aligned with the new legislative framework, so the new approach to a very large extent, so a lot of the issue for which we in the past needed to have an interpretation in the guide will then be solved by the NLF. So we hope that this will be, I don't want to say that it will be not as thick, but a lot of the issue actually will be should be more easy to address. But don't worry, there will be a guide. Voila, I will stop here. And of course, so again, thank you for this this invitation, and I look forward for your question later on. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie-Josine. That was very good presentation and very clear messages from the Commission on the way forward. The next step now is that we will go on to the other panelists. One by one, they will introduce the topics for 5 minutes. And first off in that panel is Thomas Kraus, who will present the industry perspective. And please present yourself a bit and then go on to your presentation. The floor is yours, Thomas.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. Yeah, I'm working for VDMA since 2002, and I'm in charge of the machinery directive since 2002. So I have some experience following the update process from the old machinery directive coming from the year 1989. This was the 9873 EC, and then got the 2006-42, and now the new machinery regulation. And of course, I was a member of the machinery or the editorial group writing down the guide for application of the machinery directive. And I'm the chair of the task force machinery and Orgelin. But now I will raise five points. Thank you. The first is the amendment of the current guide for the application of the machinery directive. The Commission's announcement is very welcome from our side, from Orgelin, and as well from all the member companies under the Orgelin roof. And we support this important project with our experts and many of the experts are still available. So not only me, but other experts as well. Many provisions and some of the structure of the regulation has been changed, or at least has been supplemented. So there is a need to align it to the new provisions. And of course, Mehdi, you are quite right. Some provisions are explained in the Blue Guide, and this may be excluded from this work. This is quite clear for us as experts. Therefore, the adaptation of the guide is important for the application in practice, to have really coherence in the explanations, and not only in the legal certainty, but also the competitiveness of the mechanical engineering sector, and of course the IT sector, the electrical sector, and so on. So all sectors under the Orgalim roof. The second point is updating the interpretation on the form of the instructions for machinery and related products. We welcome the new provisions providing a digital instruction. Updating the interpretations on the form of the operating instructions in the existing guide is a very important issue. I'm talking about the para 255, because this interpretation is dated from July 2017. And since this day, the use of digital information become widespread. So we have developments, and we have to cover this. Until we have improved this interpretation, the use of digital instructions or the use of digital will continue to advance. With the provision of the new EU regulation for machinery, we have a very good basis for amending this interpretation that can meet the needs of today. Orgalim has prepared a proposal for this, as announced in the machinery expert group, and it gives me a great pleasure to present this proposal to you, Mehdi. And we want to submit this in a formal way, but we are happy to submit this, and we are have an offer to work on the proposal to integrate it into the official guide. Yeah, the next point is are the partly completed machinery, which essential health and safety requirements to be applied. This is an important question in practice. Until now, the customer or the manufacturer have to decide which of the requirements are to be fulfilled for a particular partly completed machinery. And we would like to continue this successful applied practice. But the provisions in Article 10a now of the provisional legal text give reason to suspect that there might be a change here. By updating the guide, we have the chance to provide more clarity on this point, and the clarity that is also generated by the provisions of the EU regulation for machinery itself. These are the provisions according to for establishing the EU Declaration of Incorporation according to Annex 4. I think this is a good basis, and therefore a question of maintaining the coherence of the provisions that apply to this issue. The next point, a key date regulation or deadline regulation for application of the new machinery regulation. On a certain date, probably in January 2027, maybe the 15th of January, the manufacturer must apply the new machinery regulation. Until the day before, the manufacturer has to apply 2006/42 EC. And not only manufacturers with a wide range of products will have considerable problems as a result. And therefore, we should find a way to preserve legal certainty on the one hand, but takes into account the need of the praxis. So a dated declaration of conformity in the DOC could be a solution. Furthermore, this solution is explained in the Blue Guide in chapter 211. So it's good to have the Blue Guide, and it's good to have an alignment of the machinery regulation to the model provisions of the 768/2008, which are explained in the Blue Guide. So I think we have a good basis for this. The next point, common specification. A planned fallback solution must not become a rule. This is a very important issue because harmonized standards are a successful story under the new legislative framework, and it's important to continue writing this success story. However, the criteria under Article 17(3) of the EU regulation are a big concern for industry. If, for example, the deadline for drawing up a standard are not met and implementing acts establishing common specification can be adopted. As authors note, there is still a long delay in publication of harmonized standards because of the checking process of harmonized standards. If a harmonized standards reflects the essential requirements which are in Annex Z. And such delays must not lead to the use of common specification to use this fallback option. And one question to Mehdi, which is not here at the slide. What about an update of the mutual recognition agreement with Switzerland? It is an absolute, or it is absolute in the interest of companies of member states that the internal market continues to function smoothly also with Switzerland. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas Kraus. Very good intervention. I now then pass the floor to Maureen Logge, Director of General Quality and Safety, FPS Economy, to give a bit of perspective from the member states' accreditation bodies and the view on market surveillance with this regulation going forward. Please, Maureen, the camera and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Daniel, and good morning to everybody, all the participants. I'm talking here today with two hats. First of all, as head of the market surveillance authorities, but also of the notifying authorities, and also with the head of the president of EA, the European Corporation for Accreditation. Can you have the next slide, please? Let me start by explaining a little bit the challenges we are facing with this new regulation, and I'm very pleased that it is a regulation. Like Mehdi said, it will create a level playing field. We are striving for harmonization and a harmonized approach within the EU, so the regulation will help us to that end. Belgium participated, of course, in the negotiations in Council when this regulation was developed. But also we faced the higher complexity. It was already mentioned, we have artificial intelligence, we have cybersecurity, we have the digital aspects which are coming in. And we see that at EU level, more and more horizontal legislation like the CRA, the Cyber Resilient Act, are established, which are having an impact on the machinery. So for us as market surveillance authorities, it is getting quite complex. Also, that means that we must have in the services, in market surveillance services, experts who are able to interpret these requirements, especially if we are looking at artificial intelligence, if we are looking at cybersecurity. So it's asking quite a lot of resources from market surveillance. Sometimes we do not have those resources in-house, and we have to search for those resources external, and that brings a high cost for market surveillance authorities as well. On the other hand, we are very pleased that there's an alignment with the decision 768. So we have the new economic operators. For us, it's very convenient that due to this alignment. We have more possibilities. We do not need to invent new legislation because our market surveillance was already regulated by Regulation 1020. So we can build on that to do the market surveillance for the machinery. And the problems we fear here and we see here is what the problems that we have had under the old directive as well, is sometimes we have economic operators which sell their products online. And it's very hard for us as market surveillance authorities to get a grip on that manufacturer, especially if he is outside the European Union. In principle, as a market surveillance authority, we always try to the highest person in the supply chain to impose measures or to get in contact first. So with online sales, we are facing more problems because it's not always easy. Well, it's sometimes easy to know who the economic operator is, but then to have the cooperation from that economic operator, that's more difficult. But again, we are very pleased that there is an alignment, that we have the different economic operators now into the regulations. So we have the manufacturer, and now we also have the distributor and importer that we can target, and the authorized representative, of course. So for us, it's a step forward, and it's helping us in performing the surveillance. What we also see is that we as authorities have to keep up with the fast changes in the market. Of course, we heard it, innovation is crucial, and we are open for innovation, but that means that we as market surveillance authorities also have to deal with those fast changes in the market, which is not always so easy for us either. And then I would like to come to the second bullet point, is knowing our market gives us an opportunity to better focus the market surveillance. And there we need the help of the members of Orgalim. We need your help to better know the market. And we see that there are always economic operators who try to circumvent the current legislation and the new regulation in future. So we need your help as well to identify which sectors are more crucial to focus our market surveillance on. So I really would like to seize this opportunity to ask you to help us to perform better our market surveillance. Again, and in the introduction from Daniel, you heard how wide your market is. So you must think about that when you deal with market surveillance as well. So we really need your help so to try to focus. We want to be proactive when we do market surveillance and not reactive. So we really want to be proactive. And for that, we want to focus on those areas and those product sectors which are crucial and which there are most problems. So there we need your input. And then last, what I would like to say as well is that in the new regulation, you have, of course, the notified bodies who are interfering for the Annex 1 Part A products, which has now been extended. In Belgium, we made accreditation mandatory. So for us, it's good. Still, there's the possibility in the regulation to also use a different assessment for notified bodies. But also there, I would like to thank Orgalim because they are part of the advisory board of EA, and their input in that forum is also very highly appreciated, because if we are talking about notified bodies, market surveillance authorities rely on the input as well from notified bodies. They do check the essential health and safety requirements, so it's important that they have the needed competence and that we can rely on the input from the notified bodies. So also there, I would like to thank Orgalim and its members for bringing their input. So that was my first introduction, and I'm happy for having the Q&A session afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maureen. That was very interesting to hear more on that perspective regarding challenges in market surveillance and the perspective of accreditation, national accreditation bodies. Now to the next speaker, Francisco Luis Arribas Martin, and he will give more of the perspective of the standards writers. So please present yourself and also pass the floor to you now, Francisco. Warmly welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Orgalim, to invite UNE as national standardization body to participate in this special webinar related to the new machinery regulation. So this is Francisco, a project manager at UNE. I'm responsible for the adoption and to produce harmonized standards across the technical committees in Europe. And now, regarding the new machinery regulation, of course, the element which will create an immediate impact of the FENCENELEC is over the multitude of changes in the essential health and safety requirements. So this is the framework. I think that all of you know that first of all, the European Commission established a mandate, a standardization request, and then according to the FENCENELEC internal regulation, the technical committees involved in machinery and in these industries, it has to develop standards to fulfill the requirements of the new machinery regulation. So the best impact, of course, is the change in the safety requirements. So it's expected that the changes introduced will have a high impact on the majority of the harmonized standards, and if not, on all of them, of course. For example, as the previous speakers, for example, a number of new requirements for intelligent systems, for cybersecurity, arising from the regulation from artificial intelligence will have to be taken into account by standardizers in order to help manufacturers to comply with the all relevant requirements of the machinery regulation for the products. And of course, this will imply the involvement of these new experts willing to participate in the standardization process, will be enabled through the open and inclusive process in FENCENELEC work. So, according to these new activities, the hue of tasks that technical committees has to be done in the future, of course, national standardization bodies and standardization bodies request for adequate time to adapt to the new provisions. So, as a consequence, it's fundamental to give FENCENELEC the adequate time for the review of the whole portfolio over the 700 harmonized standard under this machinery regulation, and for the adaptation of the concerned standards. To adapt this standard, we will need, as minimum, as you know, 3 years from the moment of the adoption of the new legislative act, but very likely more time, depending on the amount of complexity of new or the new modified essential requirements. At the end, we believe that the harmonized standards offers a valid and successful alternative to legislative options. So we are ready, of course, to develop these harmonized standards and try to help to the manufacturers according to the new regulation related machinery. So this is all from my side.
Thank you very much, Francisco. very interesting. And then we will start off with a panel discussion, and I will have a first question here I'll start with two questions to Mehdi, actually. So I will start off by building on the question from Thomas Kraus and ask how you plan on dealing with partnership countries, to extend then that question that Thomas Kraus asked about Switzerland to also Norway, Iceland, UK, for example. How do you plan on dealing with them when it comes to setting up these new standards and the machinery regulation? And also, I will also ask a bit of a general open question. So what you would view as the main challenge now going forward for the Commission? What you view as the key challenge, and in what way Orgalim can help out with that?
Okay, so I hope you can hear me. Yes. So I will maybe start with the easiest question, which are the biggest challenge right now. Clearly, I think the biggest challenge will be the smooth transition of for the 800 and plus standards. So the standardization request will definitely be the biggest challenge. As I said, timing will be very tight. And in this respect, I think that Orgalim member that are present in the TC, I mean, my message is that your input that will be channeled through SEN and SENELEC will be really key, so that we can make the standardization request very quickly. I think that's the immediate challenge. On your other question, with regards to the MRA also with Switzerland, I think you mentioned the other countries, but you know, the other countries, they are the member of the EEA, so situation is maybe clearer, but it's true that for Switzerland we have an MRA, and yes, we'll have to consider about updating or not the MRA, and for the time being, I do not have element to communicate to you. Maybe very quickly, because Thomas has also a lot of questions with regards to common specification. Clearly, we don't want to replace standardization. This is if need be, and I agree with Thomas that machinery is a success story. PCM, there was this question about partly completed machinery. This will be, indeed, this will be, we are talking about relevant standards, so about what can be the foreseeable use of the PCM, but when the PCM will be mounted, there might be more requirements to meet, but this will be for the manufacturer. Voila, so I think more or less, I hope that was it.
Thank you very much, and I'll go on to some questions to Thomas Kraus. So the question would be on this regulation now then, are the new requirements clear and easily applicable for manufacturers? And what are your biggest concerns regarding the implementation? So two questions for you there, Thomas Kraus. Thank you.
The requirements are a big challenge, of course, and of course most of the requirements are clear, but sometimes we need more clarity, and this is the reason to have a guide for the application, because now we have the guide for the application, and the essential requirements which are part of Annex 1 are included. So this is a good reason. There are new requirements, for example, the protection against corruption, which is in Annex 3, number 119. I think a completely new harmonized standard is necessary, hopefully a Type B standard to cover it in a horizontal way and not to have for each and every category of machinery a certain standard. This is too much work to do. Maybe in a horizontal way it's enough, and to have, for example, for certain issues, special harmonized standards. And another challenge is the requirement about the overhead power line, so the protection to have contact with this overhead power line. We see this risk of contact with overhead power lines. This is a very serious risk, but there is no state of the art to detect such power lines, and therefore we have to be careful to have interpretation of these essential requirements, because we need a really good basis. That means we need measures which are state of the art, and of course we have some needs to describe the provisions for the digital instruction, how to bring it to the customer and so on, and in which format. So there are some standards needed.
Thank you very much for a clear answer there, Thomas Kraus. And with that, I will have a question for Maureen Lage. And the first question is, then I'll two questions for you, Maureen. So will the notified bodies accredited on the Machinery Directive maintain their competence after this revision, and how will this be technically achieved? In terms of the accreditations for categories currently listed in Annex 4, but now going forward will be listed in Annex 1, Part A of the regulation. I don't know if there's clarifications needed on that question, but yeah, so on those questions, what's your view on that? Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. First of all, the notified bodies have to be re-notified under the new regulation. And in order to know if they maintain their competence, it is up to the notifying authority to verify that, because it's a notifying authority who is responsible for the notification of the CABs. When you refer, and it's also the responsibility of the notifying authority to verify that those notified bodies do realize that there are indeed new requirements into the regulation, also regarding the new elements on the documents. So it is their task to verify that, to assess that, or they can rely on accreditation. And when you make the link with Annex 1 Part A, again, we rely on accreditation. And is it normal that if they are notified under the current directive, that they will be notified under the new regulation? Again, the notifying authority has to assess that. And it will imply, if they want to be notified body for the whole Annex A part, Annex 1 Part A, that they have to have an extension of their scope, because there are two categories of products added to Part A. So it's more, and for that they need to do an extension of their scope on their accreditation, and then the notifying authority can see if that is accepted and notify the European Commission for that. So it does have an impact, and it's not automatically because they are notified under the current directive that it will be transposed to the new regulation. So there are steps to be taken by the CABs for that, and also has an impact on accreditation and their scope.
Thank you very much for that.
Clear.
It was clear, very clear. Thank you very much for that answer, Maureen. And I then go on to Francisco, and have two questions for you, Francisco. So first question is, how will the new essential health and safety requirements of the machinery regulation affect the future standardization work? And then secondly, more specifically, what priorities do you see for standardization work in the field of machinery?
Okay, third question, of course, there is a new requirement that we have to take in account to produce a standard. For example, the artificial intelligence regulation, and of course, we have to involve new experts to produce, to include the state of the art of these aspects in the new standards. Of course, in my opinion, we have to be more accurate to prepare standards, and of course, we have to try to employ enough time to produce good standards. So, in my opinion, there is not a gap in the standards for machinery listed in Annex 1 of the new regulation, Part A or Part B, and it's only necessary to adapt existing standards. For example, related, for example, in standards type B, of course, it's completely necessary to produce new standards, to produce more standards in order to fulfill the new requirements. And of course, we have a very important opportunity to use in order to be more precise with the state of the art, in order to use the outcomes, for example, the Horizon 2020 projects, because there is a lot of projects that deal with these new topics, for example, PRIMS or something, a lot of projects. So we have to use this standardization or pre-standardization works in order to adapt new standards. And finally, of course, to describe this problem, as I said before, we have to attract new experts to standardization works.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Francisco, for a clear answer there. I then go back, and we have one more question from Mehdi Hossein, and that's on artificial intelligence. You mentioned that the Commission foresees a conformity assessment. Can you explain how you're coordinating with your colleagues in DG Connect regarding this conformity assessment?
Yes, actually what we do plan is that actually there would be just one conformity assessment, that in the context of the conformity assessment that would be made for the machinery regulation. At the same time, the notified body would also assess the requirement for the AI. And what I would like to say that there has been of course, the problem that we have for AI is that AI and machinery were in the same package. But you know, luckily for you, we went faster with machinery regulation. So it's true that this is still not, everything is still not cast in stone, but the idea remain, and we are talking to our colleague, and it's the same also for the Cyber Resilience Act. We are talking regularly with them to ensure that we have a consistent application and that we do not multiply the procedure. Voila. So that's what we try to keep in mind also with the colleague, is each time to try to see that, at least for industry, even if of course this can be a different requirement, but at least if we can reduce the associated burden, this is what is guiding our action.
Thank you very much, Mehdi. We then have another question for Maureen, and before I go on to that, I would also like to just remind everyone that we have the Q&A session at the end, so we'll ask some of the questions, and unanswered questions we can also answer in the chat. We will make sure to ask as many questions as possible at the end. So please write your questions in the chat. And for Maureen now, The new regulation introduces a number of new requirements that will be implemented through market surveillance authorities. How are the authorities preparing to implement these new requirements?
Well, most of the requirements, we do not need to make big changes. First of all, we are using ICSMS already. And again, it's not the first legislation which has been aligned now. So in my services, we are dealing with other aligned legislations. So for us, it's relatively easy. We already have our penalty system and sanction system in place. Safeguard clause procedure was already in place, but I'm very pleased now to see that there is a more simplified procedure. So for that, I'm very happy with the new regulation. A big difference, like I already mentioned earlier in my introduction, is the fact that we have now more possibilities on economic operators. In the current directive, we only had the manufacturer, and the new regulation, we have the distributors and the importers that we can focus and target on as well. So for us, it's a step forward, and it will help us a lot in implementing the new requirements of the regulation. So overall, we do not need to make big changes, only related to the notified bodies. That's one part. But for the rest, most of the elements are already implemented in our legislations and our practice of working.
Thank you very much. And then we have another question then for Francisco. So over the past years, a considerable backlog of standardization has built up as a result of stricter checks and new requirements for the assessment of standards offered for the publication in the official journal of the EU. The new requirements will need to be supported with new standards, which will need to be ready for use by the manufacturers well in advance of the application date. What are your thoughts regarding the work of the Joint Task Force on the European Commission and European Standardization Organization? Do you feel confident that recommendations and measures taken as a consequence of this work will resolve the backlog and unlock better results for timely citation of new standards?
Good questions. Of course, I totally confident that the recommendation and measures taken as a consequence of this work will be useful for the whole process, because there is a new evaluation process to HAS consultants to be able to better resolve the issues arising from non-conformities detected in the draft standards. The process steps defined here cover the parts related to assessment of compliance at various stages of the work. We have to submit in 3 different stages during the process to develop a new European standard. The first stage is in the working draft, so we have to obtain a first assessment. Then the second is in the stage of inquiry, when we receive technical and editorial comments, and of course the comments from HAS consultants. And at the end, final assessment of the final standard at formal vote. In this stage is the end, when the national standardization bodies approve the publication of the standard. It is only permitted only one assessment per stage, and in case the outcome of assessment at formal vote stage is lack of compliance, an additional assessment of a revised draft may be requested either before the launch of the formal vote or after formal vote, but before publication. In summary, there will be a high-level communication flow for these first 3 types of assessment, and I think that we solve at the end the problems arising in the past.
Thank you very much, Francisco, for a good answer there. And then building on what you just mentioned also on HAS consultants, I have a question for Thomas Kraus here with the industry perspective, on the industry perspective. How can industry help to support and advance the standardization work? And specifically, how do you see the role of HAS consultants facilitating the current situation?
Yeah, thank you for this question, Daniel. I think in the past, the standardization committees has very closely worked together with the HAS consultant or the SEN consultants. This is the old name. But I think it is a very successful story to have a close work together between the standardization committees and the HAS consultants. Of course, one important point, I'm completely agree with the view of the Commission. The HAS consultant can't be a part of the standardization committee, of course, but it would be helpful if the HAS consultant take part on certain meetings of the committee to explain his complaints and to that the committee can discuss possible solutions is able to solve the complaints. This is very important to go the way forward. And of course, that we have consistency in the HAS consultancy. If there are changing persons from one person as a HAS consultant to another person, the second person has be informed from the outcome of the first person which has carried out the consultancy. So this is very important to have here really coherence, that the second person is not in a position to raise new questions or questions which are already solved. So this is leading to a backlog, of course, and we need resources. There was some lack of resources in the past. This is solved, but I think we have to improve these resources.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Very good answer. And then we're a bit early, but we will a couple of minutes, and we will then go on to the Q&A session. And for this session, I will then be so for questions from the audience that are written in the chat. And for this part of the session, I will also invite. I will be assisted by Elena Lejoff, who has worked hard on this legislation for Orgalim and is a member of my team, to ask the questions, and then we can help each other out on who the question is directed towards. Please join us, Elena.
Good morning, everybody. So I've been looking through the Q&A coming through, and I have one question that is directed to Mr. Hossein. The new and amended essential health and safety requirements will require some interpretation to allow for the development of the supporting standards. And without the updated guide, how will we reach a timely, consistent interpretation of these essential health and safety requirements?
So sorry, I had issues to unmute myself. I think the guide will come. It will not come tomorrow. It will not come next year, but it will come thereafter. So voilà, there will be a guide. But so voilà. But again, I think what you say is also true, that there will be a time where maybe we'll not have the guide, and we'll just have the standards. So I think that's something also to expect. But in any event, in the guide, we will also prioritize certain aspects, and of course, the essential requirement can be some of these aspects that will be prioritized. But it's also possible that we'll have some period, but hopefully not for too long, where you might have an uncertainty.
Is there anybody else in the panel who wants to comment on this? Thomas Kraus? Yeah, we'll do it the old way and raise our hands like this. That's a good way. Thomas, please take the floor.
It's the easiest way, Daniel. It's the easiest way. Yeah. To make a short comment. I think we have stimulation of both sides to carry out this work. Yeah? To raise questions in the standardization task forces or the standardization meetings, and to bring it up to the editorial group. Maybe if the Commission will establishing this group again, it is a good idea to receive some questions of interpretation or some questions about the understanding, and to look for the first solutions. We have a paper which is growing up, and such a living document, and to be the basis for amending the guide. So this is possible. This is our experience in the past. So we have carried out this in that way, which is described here.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else want to comment on this? Otherwise, we'll go for the next question. So we'll go for the next question. Please, Helena, if you have a question from the audience.
Another question regarding substantial modification. I'm sure this is on a couple of people's minds. And now the thing is, we have now a new definition for substantial modification. What about substantial modification due to other directives? It will also be covered, for example, for electromagnetic compatibility, or for dangerous substances. And a follow-up question to that is, will member states be able to lay down requirements to ensure that persons, including workers, are protected when installing or using machinery or related products, provided that such rules do not allow for modification of a machinery or related product in a way that is not compatible with this regulation?
So this question, is it for Mehdi, and then partly also for Maureen and Francisco, and Thomas also wants to comment. We can start off with Mehdi.
Yes, very quickly, the definition of substantial modification only applies to machinery, and because also the concept we have in other legislation would not be completely fit for what we have in the machinery regulation.
So thank you. With that, I saw Thomas raised his hand, but if Maureen or Francisco wants to comment, you're more than welcome to do so. Thumbs up. Maureen wants to comment. I'll let Maureen in first, and then you, Thomas. We'll do it that way then, if that's okay. Maureen, please.
Thank you. And indeed, that is one of the challenging items for market surveillance, is when those substantial modifications take place. Then, in principle, the person or company who's making those changes must ensure that the conformity assessment is performed. That's where we step in. We have to verify that. There's a big market. There are a lot of products. We are not always known in advance who is making modifications to what products. So that's a big challenge for us. We try to step in. That's why I said we want to be proactive, but that's where we need your help as well. If there are emerging areas, we really are reaching out to the industry to keep us informed and give us the information. We can only have an effective market surveillance if we go hand in hand. We all benefit from a safe, well, not from a safe market, but from safe products on our market. And I hope that everybody realizes that you don't have an easy task is to put safe products on the market, and we don't have an easy task is to ensure that indeed we keep ensuring a safe market. And those modifications are not mentioned in advance, they are not notified, so it is a challenge for us to work on that and to ensure that people have safe products. But again, we are reaching out to you.
Thank you very much. And I then pass the floor on to Thomas Kraus.
Yeah, I think there are different stages. At the first at the first stage, we have, of course, the workplace safety regulations. So if there is a machinery or there is an electrical equipment, this is a working tool. This is equipment to carry out work. So this is under regulation for the workplace safety. So the people which are responsible for this facility is responsible, of course, of the work equipment to keep it in a safe way. And of course, the substantial modification is a special one. There is a need because the modification is so big and so deep that the new conformity assessment procedure is necessary to keep the product in a safe manner. This is the reason for the substantial modification for this provision and the obligation that there is a new conformity assessment necessary, and there is a manufacturer which was carried out this. Because or the people who carries out the modification, the substantial one, will be a manufacturer. I think we have the introduction in many of the EU legislation now, because we have it in the Cyber Resilience Act. This is much more complicated because they say, okay, if the compliance is touched, then the modification is a substantial one and a new CE marking is necessary. In the machinery regulation, it's quite easy because we are able to talk about the risks. If there is a new risk or if there is an increasing risk, because we are talking about machinery safety, and this is connected with certain risks. So this is quite easy, but it is very clear to talk about risks. But if we talk about compliance, this is more complicated. So you have more to explain what is mentioned under this regulation or that regulation. Of course, in the future, we will get, or we have more the introduction of the substantial modification in other regulations, but we need more explanation or we need more precise provision in each regulation.
Very good. Thank you very much. And then we go on to the next question then from the audience. Elena, the floor is yours.
So I have a few questions on standardization that I would like to group together. How will the ISO harmonized standards be tackled? Will it be possible to transfer some of those standards to the new machinery regulation if they cover the essential health and safety requirements? And how would this be done on the standardization side? How will that affect the Annex ZZ or ZA? And then, do you agree that there is one specific category of harmonized standards that needs extra attention or priority in the review, and that this would be transferred to the HAS consultants?
Okay, thank you very much. I see that I saw that Maureen was nodding there, and I don't know if Maureen wants to start to change the order a bit this time around. Please take the floor if you want to.
Thank you, and I fully recognize those questions. Indeed, Annex ZZ or Annex ZA, especially for Type C, is used quite often by market surveillance authorities, and it's very important. And I always try to emphasize that we use that and we link that to the risk assessment or risk analysis, which has to be made because with the standard, especially Type C, we know which requirements are covered by the harmonized standard. So for us, it is extremely important that we indeed also have them referenced under the new regulation. So I fully support that question. When will they be also available under the new regulation? But I also would like to remind people that the harmonized standards give presumption for those requirements which are covered by the standard. So some requirements are not covered by the standard, and a lot of manufacturers tend to forget that. So I would like to seize this opportunity to highlight this aspect that has been forgotten quite often. And it's not a problem if a harmonized standard is not covering all essential health and safety requirements. That's where you have your technical documentation and especially the risk analysis for. So we combine those two elements and then you can have a perfectly compliant product. So it's not because a standard is not tackling all essential health and safety requirements that you're not able or that we must have specific specifications that or the fallback option. No, it's perfectly legitimate. And here again, we are very much looking forward that they will indeed be referenced under the new regulation as well. It's a helping tool, not only for industry, but also for market surveillance authorities. So we are on the same line there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A good answer. I saw a couple of people in the panel nodding. I don't know if Francisco, you want to come in here, or otherwise anybody else, or you're muted. Then I'll pass. Meantime, I'll pass. Oh no,
Yeah.
now we hear you.
Yeah, okay. I completely agree with Maureen because the standards are tools for the manufacturers in order to fulfill the new machinery regulation. So they have to be used as tools, and of course we have the opportunity to develop better standards in order to include these new requirements, of course.
Very good. This is almost starting. I think if both Thomas and Mehdi answer this will end up actually being the concluding question, I'm realizing, because we're coming close to the end. We might have time for just one last one. Does both Thomas and Mehdi care to comment on this last question? Thomas is passing the floor to Mehdi, I think. Mehdi, please take the floor.
And I have really nothing to add to what was just said before by Maureen and Francisco. And just on the role of the as consultant, of course, they are not here to identify what needs to be changed. They are really here to help on the assessment when there is a standard that is submitted. Also, what will be important is the mapping exercise of the current standard. And we are now talking with Sensenelec on how to organize that and to see where are the priorities indeed. Because 800 is a lot and we need to see what needs to be changed completely or just partially, because certain standards maybe will not need to be changed. It's also I want at least to reassure you, because we added some new essential requirement, but we did not completely change the existing one. So it's an evolution, it's not a revolution with regard to the essential requirement.
So now, thank you very much. So now I'll leave it up to Thomas Krause if he wants to answer this, or if we go to the last question and then we have around, everybody has a chance also to answer the last one.
Yeah,
okay.
I fully support Mehdi's answer, because it's quite right, because this is the task of the standardization committees to have their priorities. And as VDMA, we have under our roof two committees from DIN, which is mirroring the work on Senelec or ISO, for example, ISO IC. And and they are well on the way. They are looking which standards are priority A and which standards are priority B. And as you can imagine, the standards of the categories of machinery listed in Annex 3 are the A category, especially which are in Part B.
Thank you very much. Then we come to our final question.
So the final question is on the development of certain types of machinery can take a considerable time. Voluntary adoption of the regulation is not allowed. So it is exceedingly challenging for industry to do this, and perhaps there could be some allowance for a transitional period. A follow-up question, what date can we start CE marking machinery products with conformity to the new machinery regulation?
Who volunteers for this last question? Maureen, I pass the floor to Maureen. Yes, I thought so.
Me or Mehdi. Well, the transition period is clearly mentioned in the new regulation. As explained by Mehdi at the beginning of this webinar, there's no voluntary, but that does not mean that manufacturers cannot start. And also, I would like to point out that there is an exception into the transition period that the notified bodies can already start working as well. So manufacturers can prepare so that they are ready as soon as the date is there on which they can release their product under the new regulation on the market, that they are ready on the first day. So if they have notified body involvement, that one can be active already, can be ready to deliver the EU type certificate or the report, depending on the modules used. But then, at least because developing a new product takes a lot of time, and we have 42 months now, so you have plenty of time to develop new products, even to prepare your conformity assessment so that you're ready to put it on the market as of day one, CE marked under the new regulation. But as mentioned, and Mehdi can correct me, it's not possible to do it before that date under the new regulation.
Thank you very much. I give Mehdi a chance to answer also.
No, I mean, fully agree. Of course, it's also possible that the future product will also be compliant with the current directive. It's also possible because we are just adding some layer, but voila, but fully agree with what was said.
Thomas Kraus, you get a shot at the last comment.
Yeah, I would support what Mehdi said and Maureen also. The manufacturer is in the position to carry out preparations, to be prepared for the new regulation and to check the technical file of the existing machinery against the new and the requirements of the new Annex 3 and the machinery regulation. This is possible. Why not? And the manufacturer is prepared. Okay, these and those requirements need more safety measures or amended safety measures. Then the manufacturer can start until the day of application of the new machinery regulation. But in the time frame in which the old machinery directive has to be applied, these preparations can be carried out.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Francisco also wants to have a shot at the last comment. We 1 minute over time, but you have your shot as well.
Yeah, fully agree. We have a lot of tasks to do. It's a huge process. It's not a disruptive process, of course. It's an improvement of the standards and the machinery. And in Spain, every year we have a similar webinar in order to try to attract the manufacturers to start and participate in standardization activities. So I think that it's a good challenge to be here and to participate in this new process. Thank you.
Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you to the audience, and we still have a lot of questions in the chat, and we will try to make sure to deal with them in the chat, or getting back to some of you later on. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate the over 200 participants that we had at the seminar, and especially warm thank you to everyone in the panel and our keynote speaker from the Commission. We're very happy and honored that you all could join us today. We look forward to keeping in touch. There's work to do, and we appreciate all the clarifications we got here from this policy exchange today. Thank you very much. Be careful out there. We'll stay in touch. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.